Hello, I'm Chris Solo, and welcome to the Fabled 42, where we build community through friendship, gaming, and chaos. This is Quests and Answers, where we go on the quest to find your answers. Today we are talking about the Barbarian class within Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and with me I have my special guest, Utahime. Why don't you tell the folks where they can
Hi.
find you?
Hi guys, Utahime. You can find me at Utahime Cosplay on Facebook, Instagram, on Twitch as well, and Brianna DeCoster on Twitter. And then you can catch me in Wizards of Ukador as Kizana Moonshadow or Vault 42. I play Ash, the super mutant. Guess what? Barbarian.
Yes. And since we're segueing into that, we're going to talk about barbarians. And I know before this call you had mentioned that this is your first time playing barbarians. So, and I
Yes.
know Vault 42 is mildly reskinned version of
Yeah.
the traditional barbarian, but a lot of the meat and potatoes of the class is still there. So,
Yeah.
what was the motivation to try this class out?
Well, I have always been a fan of like really strong female characters, and I wanted to try to. I usually lean kind of towards like fighters, rogues. I play a paladin, a half-orc paladin in one campaign, and I was like, I kind of want to test out, an even tankier class, and everyone was kind of telling me, hey, like maybe check out Barbarian. And when Vault 42 came around, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I felt like a connection to the super mutant because they're kind of similar in a way as far as the stats and stuff to orcs. And then I was like, Barbarian fits. I think that it would be really cool. And also too, especially in the Fallout world, you got to be able to take like hit radiation, all these different things coming at you. And, I thought it would be a really interesting challenge to try to do something different and be a tank. For change.
Yeah.
Kind of out front and center.
Absolutely. And it makes sense, especially in that world, to be someone who can take that damage because there's just a lot flying around.
Yeah. You never know what Overseer is going to throw at us.
Absolutely.
So you have to be prepared for anything.
So when you're playing this character, have you watched other streams where someone was a barbarian? Have you not idolized, but have you kind of took a lot of information when you were kind of building this character, or did you just read the stuff in the book and just say, I'm going to play this and this is how I'm going to play it?
I haven't really seen a lot of, at least from like the different streams that I've tuned into and like different channels, not a lot of barbarians, at least for the ones that I've seen, with the exception of one that my friend Alex was a part of. And his barbarian was really interesting because he was like the barbarian with class. So he was kind of like, if you imagine like Gaston and like that kind of persona, but like, so the classy barbarian and like, he's going to be very proper, but when it comes to battle, then that kind of gets tossed aside a little bit, and he's like,
you can admire me while I'm in the tavern, but when I'm out
pretty
there,
much. And of course he kind of has the Ronin thing where it's like sleeveless vest. So he has
the guns,
very nice, like fancy vest. So I remember watching and I was like, oh, that's really fun, because I didn't really, you don't often see that kind of combination. It's usually always just like rage, which is funny because that's kind of my character. I was like, I'm not really that type of person that's just like, but it would be kind of fun to play and play around with a character that does have that kind of like maybe a ticking time bomb at any moment. And
I mean, even your spin on that is so greatly different than the traditional barbarian rage, because usually barbarians are these rage monsters where they're not very bright and they're very emotional, and they're fine one minute, the next minute they're raging, right?
Yeah.
And Ash is a little bit more reserved and smart about it, but still, this crazy rage monster with some serious thighs and just wants to smash things. Like, that's just her mentality, right? Yeah.
But what's interesting is that like I think, because it's like seeing like my friend kind of do a different spin than what I've seen for barbarians, I was like, I kind of want to make it where it has a lot to do with like her backstory and where she came from, her origin story. And I felt like I wanted to add some depth to it. Like why, like people don't know why yet, why she kind of, things will kind of snap, especially when she sees robots and artificial intelligence and things, but there's a purpose behind that, and there's certain triggers, and I think kind of making that where it's like, almost like a little bit of that humanity aspect where like, you know, we all have certain things that kind of trigger things and memories and, you know, can cause that, you know, to come out. So I wanted to try to make sure that it was connected to the story in a cool way, and for
absolutely.
those people to see that progression, you know.
Yeah, and I could totally appreciate that, because that's how Viago started, and you know, Cantor ended up getting we just wrapped up with a short season, and then, you know, the story's done. But there was a lot more about Viago, and that was kind of the essence of it too, was that he is this half orc, half Goliath, so two very powerful, very just angry races, and he's this gentle giant. Where, you know, he used to do all these crazy things, and then he met this woman, and then she showed him a different way to live. And he stopped being this rage monster. They had a child, and then shortly after that, you know, the mom died, and dying deathbed, she's like, you can't rage anymore. Like, you can't be that monster anymore. And so he, you know, is taking care of this little elven, you know, girl who's now becoming this woman, and he doesn't know what the hell to do. He's 8.5 feet tall. He's 320 pounds. So he ends up kind of veering away and still kind of being that old person, but never raging, which is an interesting mechanic that I didn't come up with it on my own. There was some podcast I was watching somewhere where someone was a barbarian and never raged until like level 14.
That's
which everything about a barbarian that makes you everything that makes the barbarian awesome, you need to be raging for. So, and I did some of that, so I didn't rage until level 4, and that was hard in its own right, because my damage take isn't halved. All these things, all these abilities I can't do unless I'm raging. So like, I'm just kind of a really weak fighter at this point, but being able to take that narrative and take that really strong desire of it, and then pushing it that long was kind of the goal. But because he's this gentle giant and he's carving out these little things or whatever, we rolled live our dice. My lowest skill is a 12, and I put 14 into wisdom for my barbarian. So
my rolls were high for Ash. So my con and my strength is like pretty up there. Like it's like the lowest is 12, and that's for charisma, because I don't really have much of that as Ash.
No, that's it, and it fits, and it's perfect. But it's fun to break the mold. Is what I was getting at. Is you know, he's got the high wisdom, but he still looks like he's an idiot, and he plays on that. So he pretends to be this, I'm just a big dumb giant, but inside he's like, I'm watching you, and I'm watching you, and I'm paying attention to what you're doing.
That's cool.
And then he can turn it on them. But it's always fun to break those molds, because the traditional, I'm a big barbarian, smash, 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 like that just gets boring after a while. It's a very flat character, unless you spice it up like what you're doing with Ash.
Well, and I'm glad that people are liking kind of the direction that it's going, and it was one of those things that I was like, you know, when I wanted it to be like different, because I do know that, of course, just like orcs, I feel like orcs are always like usually put in the category of like big baddie meanie, you know, and I felt like a super mutant is kind of similar in that way, like where people automatically assume that, you know, it's just like one dimension, like that's it, like just one mode, and that's it. But there's so much more to that, and it makes it more fun when you're playing it. And I'm like, the difference is that she actually like had to fight to survive in this setting, and so it's kind of like, how do you turn that up? Like, that's just what you're used to every day. That's kind of put food on the table, you know, for yourself, you know, and making it out there in the wasteland. So, but it's really fun to kind of, you know, play with different aspects of that. And what path did you choose for Viago? I totally forgot for Viago.
Yeah, so for Viago, I chose Path of the Juggernaut, which is something that Matt Mercer picked. Which it made sense, because he's such a big guy. He can never be knocked prone if he's raging, ever. And when he punches buildings, it's like he's a siege weapon. And there's some other fun things where I can move through people's spaces, or when I punch someone the first time, or when I hit someone the first time, they fall prone. Like, so it's just, his hits are just more strong. And the fun thing is Logan allowed me to take Warhammers and like mold them into brass knuckles. So I literally just punch stuff with Warhammer knuckles.
That's
and
epic.
That was just amazing. But Yeah, and I've played other barbarians too. In Fables of Ukador, I played a 3-level moon druid and a 5-level totem bear barbarian, which was
That's
a
really cool.
ridiculous combination because you can rage in totem bear barbarians. You resistant to everything but psychic. So I'm
Yeah.
raging, and then I turn into an animal that's also resistant to everything but psychic, and that's just that's a hit point pool. So then when that bear is done and dead, you go back
Yep.
to your barbarian form and like, hey, I'm fresh, let's go, and then you're wailing on them again. So it's a fun kind of overpowered combination, but it's definitely fun to play. It's
Yeah,
definitely fun to play.
Totem is really interesting. They did have that. It's interesting because the Fallout, there was only 3 different paths that you could choose because of the fact that magic and things, it's not really a part of that world. So it was like the Battle Rager, Berserker, which is the path I chose because I felt like that just was Ash. And then of course they had an altered version of the Totem Warrior as well. But yeah, Berserker was just like, I'm like, yeah, she's gonna go a little crazy. So that just was like perfect. When I read it, I was like, yeah, that's it right away. I didn't even really think about it twice. It was just, it clicked. So
absolutely. And and comparatively now, so you've played Ash for about 6 episodes, I believe. And you've played a lot of other classes. How are you liking Barbarian? Are there things that you have learned a lot in these past 6 episodes?
Yeah, I've been loving it. It's like I play, as I mentioned before, I play a half orc paladin, and that's been a really fun character to play because you do a lot of smiting. There's a lot of damage and things that happen with that, but it's mainly a lot of things are focused to, like I had it with the god that she worships, or she serves, which is Ares, the god of war. So it's a little bit different because the motivations are totally different from Ash. So it's been fun to kind of play like this character that's like just like smashing and bashing everybody, and like, but she's kind of doing it for, like, this is like her own, she's making her own path. It's not to make anyone, like, to gain honor or any of that. It's no, this is for me. I'm looking out for me, like me, myself, and I. But at the same time, kind of like maybe there's friendships developing. I don't know. But it's been really cool because it's teaching me to kind of think outside the box. And I've been trying to do fun stuff like I have for Ash, because she has that background as a underground fighter, incorporating kind of my love for WWE and wrestling like over the years growing up. So I kind of have created names for some of her moves, which people will see as the series continues. The campaign continues. You'll see some of those, the names from certain moves where she's not using a weapon all the time. Just because I was like, I feel like that would fit, a character who's been kind of, having to, put on a performance of show every night. That's gonna stick with you and be a part of the way that you battle. So that's been really fun to play around with that aspect of things too. It's like there's so many ways you can do damage as a barbarian, but it's funny because I didn't think that it would be as much math as like rogues, and it's starting to get to that point where I'm like, the higher levels you have brutal criticals and other things. We're not there yet, but I'm just like, I already have Savage Attacker and a special feat called Fallout Slayer, where it's basically like anytime you hit a critical, it's like just adding damage upon damage upon damage. So even at the lower levels, you still are just tearing into these enemies, and
that's amazing.
It's hard for you to get hit in return. So that's especially like, as long as you don't forget to rage. That's the lesson I learned right away when I did not rage, and I was like, I didn't rage. Oops, that never again, because
that hurt.
That hurt.
That's amazing. Are you able to share any of these awesome names for your moves yet?
Oh, yeah. So some people have already been acquainted with some of them. So I had like Crowning Glory was one that I guess people really liked that one in the chat. I saw it was basically, it's that one I actually used my super sledge. It's basically just another way of like kind of a fancier way of hitting someone up, like upside the head, but
Yeah.
it's just like you do
Yeah.
it with style.
Of course.
And so
Of course.
I also had I have one that I'm going to kind of, now that like I can do extra attacks now, because before I only had one attack. But that happens when you're lower level. But when you have multiple attacks, there's one called reckless aggression, which I'm sure WWE fans will appreciate that
Absolutely.
reference. And it's basically where I'm just like punching full force, like punching the mess out of someone, and
oh my god, that's amazing. Yeah,
in the
amazing.
face. Yeah. So,
yeah, I didn't know you were a big
like
WWE fan. That's good information.
yeah, like I fell off, and then I got back on the train, and I watch it with my roommates, and
oh, that's amazing.
it's been fun.
Without going down a crazy tangent, like I was obsessed with it when in high school, so we did it 3 years in a row for talent shows. I created the Wolfpack Association. Yeah, and I was a shooter, so I was a high flyer, so I would do like backflips off the top rope, like the Swanton Bomb was one of my finishing moves. I
love it.
Doomsday Device was done to me once. Like, so there's all that stuff is ridiculous. I actually applied and was accepted to go to Tough Enough, but I was in the Navy at the time, and they wouldn't let me go.
Oh, that would have been so
The
cool.
one when Maven won, like, I mean, I was a lot bigger then, but I was still short. Yeah. So, like, I don't fit the mold of the modern wrestler. Like, I fit the 90s mold, like the Shawn Michaels mold, where we're all a bunch of short guys. But I'm obsessed with it.
Heartbreak Kid. All the classic stuff.
Yeah, but he's like literally my height. He's 5'8", and these giants are like 6'9". Like you can't kick him in the face. Stop it. No, like you're gonna break your hip.
Yeah, so I'm like imagining. So for me, it's Ash is like 6'3", so she could do a ton of like fun stuff. Like when I was like atomic drop kick, where I just like basically catapult off of my sledgehammer and then just plant my big boots in the center of someone's chest and just knock them out, just because I'm like, okay, that instead of a rope, you're just going to catapult yourself using your weapon, because there's no ropes. But stuff like that, I love it. Yeah, no, I've been playing around with. But
yeah, now that I know that, I'm very excited to see what
I might add more. I have like a small list, but we'll see. I'll continue like getting inspiration, and there's others, but I don't want to give them all away. But those are like some that that I've kind of thrown around.
So already. If you were going to build another Barbarian for a D&D specific campaign, no more the Fallout flair, which one would you pick and why?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I think it would be really interesting. I saw I was looking at Path of Storm Herald, and I thought it was really, really cool. The fact that it's like, it's kind of like primal magic and things you could do with storms, and like thinking, I'm trying to think of like a kind of a character. I almost feel like it would have to be like the race would have to be one that kind of like revolves around the ocean. Yeah. But I think it would be really cool to play with that. I mean, there's also too like desert and tundra and different things. So it just depends on the world, but I think that would be really, really fun to kind of play around with that, like the elements and.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be fun to do something like that. When you talked about oceans, like you could take the background of a sailor and you were part of a ship, and then whatever, like all these crazy things happen, and now
pirate or something, something like that, and just playing around with that. But when I saw that one, I was like, that it seems really interesting, and I always like something where it seems like it could tie into a really cool backstory, and you could kind of develop this whole thing, reason why they came to be that way. And I'm like, yeah, that would be cool. Raging, like just the fact that it's like raging storm at like level 14. I mean, that's a long ways away, but the stuff that you can do, I'm like with your storm aura, I'm like,
that's pretty cool. That's really cool. Okay, so we only have just like a little under a minute left. What, in 30 seconds, what is your favorite part about being a barbarian, and why?
Favorite part? I gotta say, it has been being able to rage. Like, I love the fact that because I'm Path of Berserker, the fact that I can go from 0 to 100, and then I literally am just like with my frenzy attack, I use up all of my literally physical energy to the point where I get an exhaustion.
Yeah.
point, after a level of exhaustion, because I use so much energy. I just think that it's just such a cool visual in my head. But that's maybe because
Yeah.
I like the crazy characters sometimes. But I really have enjoyed kind of playing around with that and kind of making it like what makes her frenzy.
Yeah.
How can I, like, add, reckless attack or do different things, and kind of make her just go all out on this person. And that's been really fun, is playing around with that, because I've of all the characters I've played, this is the first time, as I mentioned before, that I get to really just, I'm front and I'm the first one in lots of times, or just like, before everyone else, and not caring about what's going on around me, just like almost zeroed in on the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really, it's been fun. I'm sure there's gonna be times where it bites me in the butt later,
always. But you still do it because you're barbarian.
I still do it because it's still, you don't learn. You just go for it.
It's amazing. Well, thank you very much for talking to me about Barbarians. This is Quests and Answers, where we go on a quest to answer your questions. So, Utahime, where can we find you?
Again, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitch at Utahime Cosplay, Utahime Cosplay, and Brianna DeCoster on Twitter. Awesome, and of course on Fabled 42.
Yes. We're all here all the time, and it's kind of our home away from home. But thank you all so much. Again, I am Chris Solo. You can find me at DM Chris Solo on all the social medias. Smash that subscribe button if you enjoyed what you watched today, and we will catch you guys in the thing. And we'll catch you guys next time.